Welcome to Close Listening. I'm your host, Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. And I have some exciting news. No, it's not that my beard is gone. I'm doing that for the first time in over a year, only because I had to have just a mustache for my Halloween costume. And even though I'm the guy who sang a song called Sensitive Mustache, I'm really not good at keeping a mustache for long. It feels too out there, so clean shaven for a while, and hopefully the beard comes back relatively soon. But no, my exciting news is one of my New Year's resolutions for this year was to listen to every single Rolling Stones album. I've also been listening to every single Beatles album, but that was a bit different. With the Beatles, I know the Beatles very well. It's just I hadn't systematically gone through the albums as someone would have done, earlier in the cassette age, or certainly in the vinyl age, right? I grew up with like greatest hits CDs, and now just everything being on YouTube. So with the Beatles, it was just more of a do it properly. But with the Stones, I felt like, I knew a few of the songs. I had the Through the Past Darkly Volume 2 compilation album on cassette. So I knew the hits of the late 60s, but I felt like I was missing a lot. I didn't necessarily appreciate them the way the world's second best band of all time deserve to be appreciated. So I started and made a video on England's newest hitmakers. I haven't really been talking about them in videos just because, there's so much and, I can only make so many videos, this being one of my many hobbies. But now I thought since I got to the last Stones album, Blue and Lonesome, figured I should comment on it. It's a nice circular place to go, even though Blue and Lonesome, I'm pretty sure, will not be the last Stones album. I've looked it up. I've seen both Mick and Keith talking in interviews about an upcoming album. They've been playing a new song called In a Ghost Town on their latest tour, so there will be at least one more album, and then who knows if they'll be comfortable really maintaining the identity of the Stones now that Charlie Watts is gone. But for now, this is the last Rolling Stones album, and it felt really circular because at the beginning of their career, the Stones pretty much just played covers of blues songs, early rock songs, and this album was just blues and it was just covers. And supposedly they were in the studio trying to come up with something that was a more original album, but then they just started jamming to the song Blue and Lonesome by Little Walter, and they realized this was the music that brought us together in the first place. We love all these blues songs. We can play them together. We don't have to do all sorts of complicated studio editing. Let's just jam and have a good time. And that's pretty much what the record is. So the first track on the album is called Just Your Fool. You can hear a lot of sass and mixed voice. It's not really heard in the sort of hard rock era of the Stones. So what I was thinking when I was getting to this album is that, after the 60s, the Stones became more of a pure rock band and less of a Beatle-y genre bending thing, and I sort of figured, well, classic rock and blues are largely the same. But boy, was I wrong, because even if it's the same instruments and it's still electric blues, you can still hear the stripped down quality. And Mick isn't screaming on all of these songs. You can really hear the expression in his voice, especially on this first one, which he's really not overdoing. It's a nice, simple little song. It's a lyric that's not brilliant on its own, but it's just concise. I'm just your fool. It gets to the point. The one thing is the Little Walter song does get a little hyperbolic towards the middle after it starts out being all simple and loving. I'm just your fool, I can't help myself. I love you, baby, and no one else. Well, I'm crazy, you are my baby, I'm just your fool. And the third verse it goes, if you're gonna leave me for someone new, go buy a shotgun, shoot at you. So, the blues sometimes and early rock has this weird thing about melodramatic jealousy, and one has to hope it's just melodrama and nothing to be taken literally. But anyway, that's the song, and it's by Little Walter, who is considered one of the greatest harmonica players of all time. I only know him because I saw this biopic about several artists. Muddy Waters is also in it, Howling Wolf, Chuck Berry, Etta James. I believe Beyonce plays Etta James, and Mos Def plays Chuck Berry. And Adrian Brody plays Leonard Chess. And I took it out because it was a movie about the company that I knew produced Chuck Berry, but they were also involved with all these iconic blues figures, and it introduced me to Little Walter, who's supposedly the only individual inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame primarily as a harmonica player. So anyway, the point of a record like Blue and Lonesome is the Stones saying, hey, we love all these artists. They're not so famous anymore. Maybe pay attention to them. So just as much as I'm reviewing the Stones here, I'm trying to sit back and listen to these artists, and Little Walter is one of the recurring names on this record. Track 2 is called Commit a Crime. You have to look this one up because it's credited to his real name, but the writer and singer of the song is Howling Wolf. And now Mick doesn't necessarily sound like Howling Wolf, but there's an overall rawness to the song that sort of goes with the Howling Wolf brand, and Charlie's simple but loud drumming. Now, just like the last song, there's some melodramatic, toxic romance stuff going on here. In this case, it's just more unequivocally funny. You put poison in my coffee instead of milk or cream. You put poison in my coffee instead of milk or cream. You're the meanest woman that I ever seen. So I went back and listened to Howling Wolf because I feel like that's a name I know. I vaguely associate him with Muddy Waters. They were apparently rivals. I was expecting a sort of deep, menacing voice, but it was more nasally, actually. It kind of came across as like a funny Looney Tunes character, but in a subtle and good way. So track number 3, the title track, Blue and Lonesome. Again, a little Walter song. And there's a nice tonal shift here. There's a nice tonal shift between Commit a Crime and Blue and Lonesome, because this one shows that blues can be done not just with the standard 1-4-5 chords in a major key, but also in a minor key. There's one point towards the end of the first verse where Mick's voice gets too loud for the microphone, and supposedly this was a very quick recording session. They weren't trying to be perfectionist, and you know what? I like that. Like, I think I've said before, lots of the time when I record, there'll be mistakes, sound distortions, and I know when I'm listening to it, well, it's because I'm an amateur recording artist. But when you hear someone who has access to professional recording support, I believe Don Was was the producer on this album, and you just hear a little mistake like that, you have to think, oh, it's intentional, and you can appreciate the quirk of it. The harmonica on this one sounded really nice. It really rose above the mix, and I love this line in there about being down in the deep blue sea, and Mick's voice just really sounds like it's soaring through the water on that one. Track 4 introduces us to another artist, Magic Sam. This one, it has a kind of smoky bar feel to it, and there's a slide guitar sound in it that gives it a psychedelic vibe. It's more atmospheric than good as a pure song per se, but there are some nice screams in there from Mick. And the style itself is very influenced by the original, by Magic Sam, who was known for having a very tremolo guitar. So even if it was an old blues song, it too had this, root psychedelic feel in it. Track number 5 is I Gotta Go. It's another little Walter song, so unsurprisingly, it starts with some blazing harmonica, and it has this nice sort of fast-paced bass line on it, under it. I'm not someone who, instinctively hears bass all the time, but it really stands out here. And again, even though the lyrics are simpler on this one, I would suggest listening to Little Walter's version. In this case, the studio quality is a bit crackly, but that just makes Walter's harmonica sound all the more expressive in contrast to how the rest of the song is recorded. Track 6 is called Everybody Knows About My Good Thing. It was recorded by a singer in 1971 named Little Johnny Taylor, and it was written by Miles Grayson and Lerman Horton. The actual song itself doesn't sound that remarkable. The piano in the background is sort of soft in a noticeable way. I think that was an example of some good recording. And Mick here, he's starting to put on his cartoonish voice again. He's not just letting the blues come out naturally from him. Not necessarily a bad thing, but what I liked in the earlier tracks is how he wasn't using the screaming voice from his rock days, that he was really showing how well the classic blues goes with his style. Now, the lyrics to this one are actually kind of interesting. It's kind of a, borderline sexual, but certainly an adult version of Who Are the People in Your Neighborhood. Was talking to my neighbor about the way you wear your hair. They say you must have a lot of children because the milkman's always there. And I was talking to the butcher. He said you always look neat. I guess that's why my freezer is always full of meat. I had to stop and think that one. I guess the butcher is just giving them a lot of free meat. It's not any more lewd or disturbing than that. Track number 7 is called Ride 'Em Down. There was a music video of this one with Kristen Stewart just raucously riding an old car somewhere in rural America, giving it a real blues feel to it. It's a pretty simple video besides that, which fits the song. Pretty simple blues song. It's written by someone named Eddie Taylor, and I don't know, that as an actual blues song, it didn't stand out to me in any way, though there was a good lyric in it. born yesterday and not a day before. I like when, songwriters take an already established expression and either twist its meaning or, in this case, just push the meaning even half harder. Well, I guess the expression is I wasn't born yesterday, and here Eddie Taylor is saying I was proudly born yesterday and not a day before. One of the things I got caught up in a bit of a rabbit hole reading about this song because Wikipedia links to a song by Booka White called "Shake 'Em On Down" because apparently that song had been, adapted by other blues singers through the years called "Ride 'Em On Down," and it ended up being one of the songs that Led Zeppelin quasi-recorded under a different name. But as far as I can tell, the Eddie Taylor and Booka White "Ride 'Em Down" and "Shake 'Em On Down" are different songs. And Wikipedia just got that wrong. Look at the lyrics. I mean, they're similar musically because a lot of blues is similar musically, but here I don't see a common ancestry. Track number 8 is called "Hate to See You Go." It's another Little Walter tune, and it reminded me a bit of one of the fun early Stones recordings, "I Just Want to Make Love to You," which I believe is a Willie Dixon song. Not too much else to say about this one, but one of the things I enjoyed on the album was like hearing the similarities to classic Stones recording. Track number 9 is called "Hoodoo Blues," written by Otis Hicks and Jerry West, and was famously recorded by Lightning Slim, one of the biggest names in blues supposedly, especially one of the biggest names to come out of Louisiana. There's one memorable line in there, "That little hoodoo girl, she done hoodoo the hoodoo man." The liner notes say that Slim had one major hit, and this wasn't it, so I'm a bit puzzled as to why the Stones picked this one, unless they just also really like that line about hoodooing the hoodoo man. It just sort of sounded like a lot of other blues songs to me. Now, track 10, "Little Rain," not a favorite, but kind of interesting texture here. The underlying guitar is very soft and smooth, and so Mick is kind of using a scratchy voice over it, but it's a contained scratchy voice, so having this real bluesy pained sound while also not getting too loud. It's just an interesting example of control. Now, this was a song by Jimmy Reed, who, from what I understand, was one of the better blues artists at appealing across genre markets, and one of his songs that's a great example of this that the Stones recorded earlier was "Honest I Do," which you can hear as a blues song, but it's not quite as repetitive as other blues songs, so it sort of dips into pop. He also has a song called "Bright Lights, Big City," which definitely follows the blues formula, but I guess just that hook of "Bright Lights, Big City" and Reed's very smooth voice and tastefully vibrato guitar, it creates a slight pop ambiance, even if he's mostly just following the rules of blues. Track number 11 is "Just Like I Treat You," composed by Willie Dixon, another important name from the Chess Records scene. I believe he played bass with Chuck Berry, and from what I understand, did a lot of songwriting, but was a good recorder in his own right. From what I can tell, this song was particularly associated with Howlin' Wolf, and I didn't have much to say about the Stones version other than it reminded me of a Bobby Womack song they also recorded at the beginning of their career. It's All Over Now. 'Cause I used to love her, now it's all over now. Now, the final song on the album is another Willie Dixon composed tune. It's called "I Can't Quit You Baby." The most famous recorder of this one was a guy named Otis Rush, who looked a little like Little Richard and sang with like Little Richard's ferocity, but with the timbre and smoothness of a Michael Bolton. So just listen to the first few lines of Otis Rush's version of the song because, yeah, it's quite impressive. Willie Dixon, by contrast, a more traditional bluesy voice, a bit more unequivocally deep and rusty, but still a very strong voice in his own right, what Willie Dixon had. As for the Stones, it just sounds like they're playing another blues tune here. So overall, I guess the thing that's kept me from being a huge blues fan, and after looking all these names, I'm kind of curious about listening to some of Little Walter's great harmonica solos or looking more into the Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters rivalry. I just realized, I've always been held back a bit from blues because just the formula is quite repetitive. Rock obviously borrows a lot from it, but rock and pop songs will add a bridge. They'll shake the melody up a bit more. They won't repeat lyrics quite as often. So I feel like with a blues song, often the experience is you really like the edge in the first verse, and then you just want it to take you somewhere else, and it doesn't. So the Stones, obviously being huge blues fans, maybe they don't feel that, which is why I find "I Can't Quit You Baby" such a quite an anticlimactic song to end the record on, whereas they chose it as their closer. At the same time, this was just a fun moment in the studio for them. This wasn't like a long-term project of writing songs. They were just having fun sharing the songs they appreciated. And for a band known for excess, I think it's kind of cool that they went back to their roots. And if for no other reason, I appreciated listening to that, and I'm very happy to have gotten to the end of listening to all these Stones albums and discovering lots of different songs along the way. So there are things to enjoy and things to be met out by Blue and Lonesome, but overall it does what it sets to achieve, and it has quite a bit of charm. So I'm thinking my next video will be, now that I've listened to all the Stones albums, guess I'm gonna rank them, however unscientific that will be, but I look forward to posting that video next. For Ludwig von B, I'm Zach Morgenstern. See you next time.